him a hand. He did good. Always does good. All right, some announcements here. Life Group's going to kick off the next week, the week of September 9th. They'll be meeting at different places. They'll be meeting all over. But anyway, next Sunday would be a real good Sunday not to miss church, because we're going to have them all here. We're going to have the open house where you get to go meet the Life Group people, find out when the groups are meeting, find a group that fits for you. It's going to be an exciting fall semester. We're studying the book of Romans, so we're all going to get saved and born again, and it's going to be good. Curtis needs it, and I know. The whole church is for you, brother. We're doing it all to help you. So then Monday night prayer starts that week too, so not tomorrow, but the next one, man, that's going to be good. We're going to have the truth of the matter is, if you're going to eat ice cream, you got to eat the right kind. So it's going to be Bluebell ice cream out here in the parking lot on September 9, 6:30 to 7:30. It's going to be incredible, so come to that. And then, of course, Cover the Corridor starts midnight. Mine already started for me. I just love it on Sunday. But anyway, it starts at midnight tonight. So I'll talk more about that here in the talk. If you're new to us in the last few months, you don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, we sign up for an hour of prayer a month to cover the I-35 corridor in prayer. You spend an hour with God, and it's an amazing time. If you want to grow closer to God, you want to sign up for that. It's out at the information table today. So anyway, there's that. Club 56, where are you? Sometimes they sneak out without me sending them. This is 5th and 6th graders. Go for it. Over in the youth room, they're doing that, and that's a good group over there for sure. I got one joke that I know is going to work, and I got one that I'm not sure is going to work. Which one you want to hear? All right, I'll start with the one that may not work first. So this old preacher's walking down a road, and he sees these young boys, and it reminds me of that movie. Gosh darn it. The Sandlot. Did you ever see that movie, Sandlot? So it's some kids like that, and they're standing around. They're probably 11, 12 years old. And there's a little puppy there, and the pastor walks by, and he's kind of a crusty old fella, and he says, "What are you boys doing?" They said, the one of us that can tell the biggest lie gets to take this little puppy home that we found. And the pastor, he decided to give them a 10-minute sermon about how lying is so wrong and all this kind of stuff, and they're just listening to him, And then he ends his little 10-minute tirade about how lying is a sin by saying, "And boys, when I was y'all's age, I never told a lie." And so the boys are there looking at the dog, and nobody looks up. They kind of kick the dirt. All right, give him the dog. I'll save the good one for next week, so you'll come back. How about that? I'll tell you now. So little girl goes and asks her mom, said, "Mama, where did I come from?" And she said, he said, you came from me, I'm your mom, but she goes, "No, I didn't mean more than that. Where did all the humans come from?" She said, "Well, they came from Adam and Eve. God created Adam and Eve and humans, and here we are. It's a human family." She goes, "Okay, thanks, Mommy." So she's not quite convinced. She goes and talks to her dad. Said, "Daddy, where did all the humans come from?" Dad said, "Well, there was these monkeys, way back when, and they were in these trees, and the one that was the biggest evolved and evolved into kind of a ape-like creature, and then that creature evolved into the Neanderthal, and the Neanderthal, and what all these thals. And anyway, that's how we got here. That's where the human nature came from." So the little girl said, "That's so weird." So she went back to Mommy, and she said, "Mommy, I asked you where humans come from." "Yeah, I remember that." She said, "Well, then the other day I asked Daddy where they came from, and he said they came from monkeys. So you said they came from Adam and Eve, and he said they came from monkeys." She goes, "Oh, dear, don't get worried about that. He's talking about his side of the family." Give him the dog. Luke chapter 10. Came across this in the lectionary a few weeks ago, couldn't get to it. Feel like this is the time to get to it, so here we go. Luke chapter 10, verse 38 through 42. Now as they were traveling along, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister named Mary who was seated at the Lord's feet, listening to his word. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations. And she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Tell her to help me. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things, but only one thing is necessary, for Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So it's an interesting piece of scripture. You may have heard it before. Usually the verdict is Martha is a busy person, Mary is a contemplative, prayerful person. Don't be like Martha, be like Mary. That's kind of the take home. But it's not really about that. Even though it does have something to do with priorities and busyness, what it's really about is responding to God's presence. God comes into the village. He comes into the home. And how are we supposed to act when God comes? How are we supposed to respond to God's presence? How did Martha respond? How did Mary respond? And how should I respond to the very presence of God? That's really what it's about when you look at it in the context. I hope to help us see that a little bit. But before we really break it down, let's just talk for a minute about God's presence. So that's kind of the word we put on the screen right now is presence. And it's important because the Bible starts with God being present in creation with Adam and Eve. He was present. Sometimes a lot of problems will be solved just when Daddy is present. You know what I'm saying? Just the presence. The presence. Have you ever noticed on 35, you're going along, everybody's flowing, they're all going over 70, and all of a sudden everybody starts going 68. And you can't get around them. You're blocked in all three lanes going 68, and you realize why. There's a cop in one of the lanes driving 68. He's not giving anybody a ticket. The very presence does something. Adam and Eve walked with God in his presence. They decided to go a different route. They forfeited his presence. And then they were blocked from re-entering his presence with the cherubim blocking the way. A few generations later, their descendants build a tower called Babel, a zuggernaut, trying to re-enter utopia in man-made fashion without the presence. Getting back to a very wonderful place that was in everybody's memory, but without the presence. It was an anti-presence movement. God brings judgment on that system, confuses their languages, disperses them. But humans have been trying to create their own Eden, get back to Eden ever since, but they've mostly done it without the presence of God. So here in the post-Christian Western democracies, we have our own Tower of Babel. It's called the secular myth of progress. And I have a diagram here, if I can get my laser. Yeah, let's do this. Look at that. This is where you live, friends. It's where we are now. And this is progress towards a human utopia. And progress is the way we're going to get there. And this is progressive thinking and conservative thinking. Democrats and Republicans are all bought into this right here. That if we just do it our way, we get there. So if we vote the right way, if we get it, and we got everything from deconstructionists to hyper-capitalism, and everywhere in between, but everybody's bought into getting right here. Now, look what gets thrown away. Religion, faith, and superstition. We're coming out of the dark ages. This needs to be decreasing, while this, in other words, this is holding this back. Okay? That's where we live. So let's leave that up there for a second. The thing about this, though, is it's not working. It is not working, and it has escalated its not workingness in the last decade in a massive way. Just leave it up there. People are discovering that progress is not going to get us to utopia. We see chronic anxiousness in the society all around us. Things at the national level are not getting better. They are not getting more that. They are not. Rather, they seem to be reverting backwards to tribalism and to a disconnectedness among people, and people who are lacking meaning in spite of hyper affluence. More money is flowing right now than has ever flowed in the history of the world, and most of it's right here in America. And yet we have the wheels falling off of this thing at a society level every week. They might as well just leave the flags at half-mast. You know, I drive by a flag at half-mast because I'm trying to kind of get off the grid on this news thing because I'm trying to stay joyful in the Lord. And every week somebody's flag is halfway up. And, you know, we'll almost get to the point where we just lose caring. You know, you just become numb to it. The promises of this deal right here are not working. They're failing. So we're seeing a rising gap between the have and the have-nots globally, nationally, community-wise. You're seeing a distance from the elites to the everyday people. You're seeing a growth of loneliness and social disconnectedness in spite of everybody having a smartphone. And really, it's a crisis of meaning in people's lives. There is no meaning anymore in anybody's life. And so we have that. I was going to quote somebody else, but I left it somewhere else. Don't worry about it. The bottom line is I don't have to convince you. You know. And the quote I was going to use is from a guy from Australia. This is not just America. This is all the Western democracies where you're seeing a rise of mental health issues. I mean, through the roof. Rise of obesity, rise of opioid crisis. Look, we've always had drugs, we've always had guns, we've always had people, we've always had crowds of people. Why is it that now all of a sudden we aren't able to control this mess? This thing is coming off the wheel. Okay, so why is because presence has been, if there was any presence, it was right here. And we're trying to get rid of that because we're still building the Tower of Babel right here. So you guys get the point. But here's the thing. Presence is, and we'll put up the other diagram in just a minute, not quite yet. Presence is how this whole thing ends, though. It started with God's presence. And when I read the history of the world right here, it ends with the presence. So Habakkuk 2:14 says, the whole earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters covers the seas. The last chapter of the Bible, so the Bible starts in Genesis with God's presence in Eden, and it ends in Revelation with God's presence filling the whole of the cosmos. Okay? Now let's put up the diagram of presence. This is the real deal. Here's Eden, and the presence was little. It was constricted to a geographic area, and you move toward, this is history in a linear sense, and somewhere in here Christ rises from the dead, and probably right there, and we have an explosion of the presence. And this is where it ends, God's future. New heavens, new earth. It is totally filled with God's presence. Totally filled with God's presence. So what we're experiencing now in our culture is actually God's judgment on a system that doesn't let His presence in. Oh, we don't want to talk about God's judgment, but let me just tell you what, He does judge it. And so we forget how absolutely huge God is. God is in charge. He's not some wee little deity and we got these great big problems. No, there is a great big God, and I mean He's bigger than anything you ever thought, and He is in charge. Because we tend to forget that in Colossians 2:15, our brother Paul tells us that He, when He rose from the dead, disarmed the rulers and the authorities and made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them On the cross is where he did it. So we see chaos all around us in a failing society, but it is God's judgment on a society that says, to heck with your presence. Leslie Newbigin, Bishop Newbigin, Anglican bishop, started talking about this in the 1980s, and he said that God was going to use the power of secularism against itself to undermine all other forms of belief in the world. As humans have attempted to live without God's presence, everything will fall in on itself. It will. So chaos, exhaustion, disillusionment continues to be the fruit of the secular progress myth, whether you are a conservative or a progressive thinker. Mark Sayers, our Australian friend, says it like this: God has inserted a Babel-like kill switch inside all human endeavors that leave him out, that try to bring renewal without presence. They will fail. And God made it that way. And the bigger picture, though, is one of hope, because revival and renewal move in tides. If you look at the human history of things, whether it's the Reformation or the book of Acts or the coming of Christ, if you look at things that really move things forward, you see it as a tide of renewal sent by God into the society. But what you see too is the tide going back out. And where you are right now is you're at a situation where the tide is pulling out of the Western countries. But what does it mean? It means that out there beyond the breakers, the power's building. Because the history of humanity is God comes in a powerful way. It's been a long time. Matter of fact, the last real wave that affected society-wise for us Americans ended about right before the Civil War, give or take. From 1801 to about 1859, there was a powerful wave of God's renewal that spread into America. And since then, though there have been sporadic things, there's been Azusa Street, there's been several revivals of charismatic renewal. Many of us were born again through it. There's little humps, but the big thing is back here. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. But if you want to see where the future is, you have to look backwards. I was with a guy in California in January, and he was talking on the personal level. If you as a Christian, and we all do this, right? We say, Lord, am I still in the right place? Lord, where am I going? What's my future? You've made promises to me. He said, it's like rowing in a boat. Sculling or whatever. It's a word I don't know anything about. It's a New England sport. But it's something where you row. Because I'm about canoeing, where I'm rowing forward. I know where I'm going. But if you're rowing in one of these things, you're rowing backwards. And the temptation is to be looking over your shoulder. Where are we going, Lord? Where are we going? Where are we going? And if you do that, you row in a fashion like this. So the way those guys stay straight is they have buoys and they have markers behind them. They're rowing forward with all they got. It's an Olympic sport, I guess, but they're looking behind them. That's how they know to stay in a straight line. If you want to know where God's leading you, look back. Look at where God's been faithful. Henry Blackaby helped us with this with the Experiencing God study, a 13-week study. If you're in a transition right now, get it on Amazon. It's a 13-week Bible study. It'd be a good thing for your quiet time. You will find that God builds on certain things in your life. And he's not going to, you're in a line. God's done this, and you were faithful there, and then God did this, and you were faithful there, and God did this, and it's in a progression. And so when we look back, when we say the wheels are coming off of this thing, am I the last generation on the planet, what's going on? We need to look back and we need to study, how has God moved? How did he move in the Old Testament? There's pagan nations everywhere. We're talking, you think it's bad now? We're talking about human sacrifice at the temples and stuff like that. And God breaks in to those kind of things. And he breaks in, and he breaks in. And so we look back, where is he going? And so, I don't know, so the point of the matter is, there's hope. There's a lot of hope. So what we do is, we hold on to the past history of God's moves. And we say, God, you did it? And it's a no-brainer, because we know that it ends with his presence filling the whole earth. So it's not a question of, did God die? God's dead, I guess. I mean, the whole thing's a joke. No. God's very much alive. And so we hold hope in one hand of what he's done in the past. And have you ever noticed, when you really studied the history, God didn't break in until it was absolutely the darkest of the dark. I mean, if you look at some of these great revivals, like the evangelical, during Queen Victoria's reign in America and Great Britain, some of the 1800s, it was called the Golden Age of Foreign Missions, where Protestant missionaries got it and they went all over the world. And now what's happened is, because of the seeds that those mostly gringo North Americans, mostly for the most part, went to other parts of the globe, now as the Western civilization is collapsing, missionaries are coming primarily with brown skin and black skin from those places into this place to maybe save us. It's a great reversal of missions is happening right now. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is, in the 1800s, when this great Protestant outpouring went, right before that, it was darker than dark. If you read some of the history around the Revolutionary War and the way the British treated these Americans, they desecrated their churches. They were the most anti-God people and all this, but then God revives their culture and renews their culture. And you got William Wilberforce, who God uses to abolish slavery. He was a British guy. You have all this stuff, but right before that, it was incredibly dark. So we hold on to hope on the one hand, is that, oh man, God did it, he's going to do it again. There's no question about it. It's not a hope. It's not a oh, I hope it happens. I know it happens. I know it's going to happen. Because that's how God is. I know for a fact the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Did you know that? I know it. Matter of fact, I know it so much that I set my alarm for 5 because I know when the sun's going to come up. It's going to come up a little bit later. I know it. Matter of fact. So there's hope there. The other hope I grab onto is the presence. The presence is going to fill this whole deal. So there's hope and hope. So that's a good thing, right? So the point of the matter is, it's coming. God's presence is coming. And it's coming in power. And so, do you want to be on the winning side of history? Then you better be on the God's presence side of history. That's all there is to it. You better get used to it, because God's presence is not gone away. God's presence is coming in a big deal. So what does that have to do with me? Well, we are forerunners of the new thing. We get it. I'm talking to some people who came to church today. You came to Jesus' church today. You get it. We're not like other people who are trying to stay out of God's presence or live as far away from God as we can during this earthly existence. Not us. We get it. We are the opposite. We want God's presence. We know that when God is near, things go good, and we want that. And we made up our mind that God's presence is the end game. And so we will spend an hour of prayer in the next 3 days. Why? In God's presence. There's no show. You don't get it. No glory for you. Nobody knows that you got up and did it. You go there just to encounter God's presence. And you will. So, back to the text, okay? So that's a little diversion, but it matters because Mary understood that. So what does she do? So listening. The first thing I want to talk about is listening. Mary sits at Jesus' feet, and she's listening, she's learning, and she's being near him. Being with God is what Mary's focused on, and the reason Jesus rewards her behavior is that he's trying to teach us that being with God is really enough, and it really should be our primary default position. That's what he's trying to say here. Now you see, Mary realized the importance of the presence and acted in a countercultural way. This is interesting. Women, for the most part, were not allowed to be disciples of anybody in this society. They were second-class citizens. So you hear of the Apostle Paul, you hear these people sitting at the feet of Gamaliel and learning from him, and scribes sitting at the feet of some other great teacher, Socrates or whatever. These were all men. Women were not allowed to do that kind of stuff in this society. So this is kind of what's going on. What women were supposed to be doing is what Martha was doing. Martha was doing the culturally correct thing. She was serving. And Martha was protesting the fact that her sister was not acting culturally correct. As a matter of fact, she was failing at a cultural level. Mary was not acting in the manner that women were supposed to act when a guest arrived. But Jesus rewards Mary's countercultural move and tries to help Martha see that it has value. And he tells her that Mary, even though she is doing the exact opposite of what she's supposed to be doing, is actually doing the right thing. It's interesting. So what really is Mary doing? In particular, she's listening. She's sitting at the feet of Jesus, and she's not talking. She's not saying, you know, Jesus, I'm really mad because my dog died this week. And I'm really mad because my income tax deal didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. And I'm really mad because over at the church, they're trying to get the thing paid off by November 3. And I'm really mad because of all times for me to be hearing about this, it's right now when my dog died and when my IRS deal didn't work. She's not doing that. She's listening. She's just at the feet of Jesus. She's listening. And there's other parallels in Scripture of people, and I already said about Paul sitting at the feet of Gamaliel. What is he doing? He's listening. He's learning. It's a one-way deal, man. He's getting it. He's getting it. So if we don't learn to listen, we will not know how to act. And Luke's really big on the idea of how to act correctly. So this is in Luke's gospel. So then you look at the context. Well, what's right before this? The Good Samaritan thing is right before this. Oh, what is Luke trying to tell me here? He's trying to tell me that the priest who's walking down the road and sees some poor schmuck that got his brains beat out over here by some bad guys, and the priest, who probably should have been the guy to render aid, sees the mess and says, I ain't got time for this, and goes this way. Then a junior priest, Levi, let's call him the intern at the church, he comes by, he sees the mess, he realizes what this is going to cost, and he goes another way. Both these brothers were not listening correctly, and so they didn't act correctly. Then a Samaritan, second-class citizen in this society, by the way, racism's been around. It's around in every society, right? Doesn't make it right. This is a guy that's been, injustices happened to him, racism's happened to him. He's a Samaritan. He's viewed as a second-class citizen by some people who just walk by. What does he do? He hears correctly. Take care of this guy. He goes and cares for the guy. When he's done all he can do, he takes him to a hotel. And he says, you guys take care of him because I got to go, but here's some money. Here's some money to take care of the guy. So what Luke's trying to tell you is, if you listen right, you act right. If you listen wrong or don't hear it all, you act wrong. And so that's what this point is. Mary listens right and she acts right. Martha is trying to figure it out, and it leaves you with that tension. That's what's going on. So that's what Luke's trying to say. Now, we have to learn how to listen correctly, and then we'll know how to act in the middle of the chaos and the exhaustion and the disillusionment that we're encountering in our culture. And you probably have, if you're not, you could memorize this afternoon. I'll read it real quick. Psalm 1, 2, and 3. It's worth reading. Because this is the hinge pin of anybody who's going to live in the presence of God, is this Psalm 1. There's a reason it's the first psalm. Blessed is the person who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But this person's delight is in the law of the Lord. What does that mean? The instruction of the Lord, the presence of the Lord. That's where the delight is. And in that law, in that instruction, in that Torah, this person meditates day and night. This person is consumed by what's going on with the God thing. And then here's the payoff. This person will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, and which yields its fruit in season, and its leaf does not wither, and whatever he does, he prospers. This is you need a prophetic word today. This is it. This is what God's calling you to be. In this culture right now, while we know that the tidal wave of God's presence is coming, what kind of people are we supposed to be? We're supposed to be the kind of people that have our roots deeply in the presence. so that we have fruit and we're not all withered and shriveled up and mad and full of hate, full of unforgiveness, listening to too much news, because the news is going to get you withered up, man. And you're going to be mad and you're going to be angry, you're going to be outraged at all the wrong things. Because the presence is coming. It fills the whole earth. So we got to be people of the presence. We got to be people that kind of have to put blinders on a lot of foolishness to say, I'm not going there. I only have so many emotions today, and I'm not going to waste them on that mess. I'm putting them in the kingdom, and I'm going to be a person that brings life. Brings life. So it'd be really good to at least memorize verse 3 of that. So it's really a systems thing, right? So this guy is a systems thing, this tree thing, right? So the output is determined by the input. So this tree is deeply rooted in underground moisture, and so we got a drought going on. It hadn't rained since June 23rd or something, and all the trees, the little trees with their roots that aren't in the soil are not rooted in the presence. They're all getting withered and dried up. Our society's getting withered and dried up. The roots are somewhere else. It's only people whose roots are in the presence that have fruit. They're non-anxious presence, man. Why am I non-anxious presence? Because I know the presence is here. I know the presence is coming. I know it's coming big time. I know millions are going to come into the kingdom. Right? So Mary, what's she doing? She's doing Psalm 1, verse 3. She's putting her roots into the presence. She's getting healthy inputs. And so when you start getting healthy inputs, you start producing spiritual fruit in the chaotic, confused culture around us, and that desperately needs it. So those closest to you and me need us to have fruit that doesn't wither. They need us. You know, our families need us to not have withering leaves and fruit. You know, I don't know your living situation. I don't know your family situation, but I know this. You have to be a source of renewal hope to your family structures, no matter how crazy those people are acting right now. Your kids, your co-workers, your employees, they need you to be a non-anxious presence and to lead out of that. And so our lives are really a part. It's not just about me being not anxious about all the craziness going on, but it's about me then having the fruit of non-anxious presence affecting you guys. I mean, really, I'm a visual aid right here, right? All of a sudden, if I come in here all wound up about the latest political yakety smack off of CNN or Fox News or something like that, and people do that, and preach the whole doggone sermon, which you should never do. This is a sacred thing. This is about the Word of God. It's not about the news. But let's just say that that's all I got. Because my roots aren't going down into the presence. My roots are going to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or whatever the heck. And I'm into that. And then what fruit do I have? I'm angry. I'm wound up. I come in here and you guys go, we ain't going to that church. That guy's got no fruit. That guy's he's been spending time, but it ain't been in the presence. He's been spending time somewhere. It comes out, guys. And so what it is that people need us to have the presence and to be a non-anxious presence in our structures that God has anointed for us. Work, school, home, all that stuff. Now, I'm putting in a plug-in right now for this Pray for the Corridor thing because I got addicted to this thing. So I'm praying, I spend time with God every day. That's not it. This is a special time that we spend time praying for our corridor, the churches in our corridor, the issues in our corridor. This includes your neighborhood. This includes the guy next door. This includes your nation. This includes leaders in the nation, all that stuff. And so I did it. We started this in April or something like that, and I've been doing it. And I had to make some adjustments, like to be quite honest with you. I decided to quit doing it at midnight on Monday. I'd just be, okay, he's my next guy up. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not doing it at midnight on Monday. I found out to do it on Sunday morning before I come in here and preach. And I've done that for 3 times now, and I found out that there's power released when I spend time just praying my hour for the corridor. Now, I've always spent time with God on Sunday before I come in here and preach. Done that my whole life since 1986 kind of deal. But I have found that as I poured into the corridor praying for an hour this morning before I came in here and talked to y'all. There's power that's released. It's happening right now. I can't believe how anointed this sermon is right now, I'll be honest with you. It's not that good. It's not that good. But there's a power in it. And so I want to encourage you to sign up with us. Nobody's checking. Nobody's in your bushes like, is he up? He signed up for like Ariana's supposed to be at 4 a.m. Nobody's over there looking. Is there lights on at 4? You know, none of that goofiness. No, this is about you. But it's about something a whole lot bigger than you. And so here's what happened last month. We do it every month. So it's the first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of every month. This is what happened last month. I've been praying all summer. Oh God, we're going to launch some good life groups in the fall, and I need leaders. I got good leaders, but there's more leaders. I know there's more leaders, and there's more leaders out there, Lord. And where are they? And that's what I do, And a lady called me up last month, and she said, I was spending my hour praying for the corridor, and God called me and another lady to be a life group leader. Would you consider us for that? I said, I know her really well. I said, not only would I consider you, you're an answer to my prayer. All that happened because that lady took that hour and was seeking God about the corridor. What was she doing? She was sitting at the feet of Jesus, because what I found in my hour that is mostly about listening. I'm sitting there with some coffee in the dark, and then when it's nice and warm like this, I'm outside. This is my deal, okay? It may not be your deal, but it's my deal. I'm outside. I'm listening. I'm saying, hey, God, I know Jay's church down in Braunfels. I know, Sozo Church over here. I know, these churches and Promised Land. And what are you doing? I know Promised Land is launching small groups. I'm just listening. I'm just kind of thinking. God starts talking. So that's what happened to that lady. She was sitting at the feet of Jesus, just like Mary was, and boom, she got some correct hearing and got some correct action out of it. The second part, and there's only 2 parts of this presence thing I want to talk about today, leads to that, correct action. Okay, so that's number 2, action. Once we've listened well, then we have a much clearer picture regarding how to act. And I think acting correctly has about 3 components that need to be talked about really quickly. The first one is obedience. Obedience is big in the Bible, guys. It's big in the Bible, okay? It is one of the key principles in the universe, obedience to authority. It just is. You can't get around it. And if you want to be somebody who responds correctly to God's presence, you got to be somebody who's also committed to obeying what God says. That's just all there is to it. The truth of it is, obedience to God will be your first and last all-encompassing deal in your life. I mean, come on, if you're a Christian, you're going to live with Him forever. I mean, that's a big deal. You got to face this guy. I mean, you can shuck and jive right now a little bit, but not for very long. In the end, a correct belief that results in correct action is what matters. And so obeying, whether you understand it right now or not, is really not the issue. Matter of fact, Francis Chan, which on the first Monday night prayer back, September 9th, we're going to show a short video by him, which doesn't have this clip in it, but he's a Chinese guy, right? He's a Chinese-American guy, planted a church in Southern California, grew to mega church size, and he went to Africa on a mission trip, and he said, it's all wrong. And he downsized everything, moved to San Francisco with his wife, spends time now developing small groups with people that live on the street or not or whatever, and making disciples. He's an interesting guy, but anyway, he said this. He said, what if Jesus said, he's a Chinese American, he said, what if Jesus said all Chinese people have to stand on your head in church? He said, well, if Jesus really said it, I don't agree with it. I think it's racist. I think it's whatever. But if Jesus said it, I'm going to stand on my head. Period. I thought that was pretty powerful. Why would you sincerely ask God what needs to be done and then reserve the right to sit in judgment on what He tells you? That is not following Jesus. He's the king of the cosmos, actually. And what He says to do is correct whether you think so or not. And obeying is the key to personal freedom. So when we obey today, there's breakthrough tomorrow because we obeyed today. And I was talking to a friend of mine who just retired from the state up in Austin. He was pretty high up in the ranks of one of those agencies. Actually, he was the director of one of the agencies. He was up there He's my age, so he was there 30 years and retired. And he said there was a guy that worked in his office that was, I don't know how old he was, but he was marriage age kind of guy, good-looking guy. And the guy was always having these girlfriends. He really wanted to be married, but he would find a girlfriend, I don't know where he'd find her at, have sex with her, live with her, and the relationship would always end in failure. And my friend said, I didn't care about this guy one way or the other. He said, but it brought troubles to the office. And he said, so after like 12 of these major involved live-in love thing that didn't end in love, and the guy being an emotional wreck at work, my friend, as the director, went to him, and my friend goes to church, not here, but I wouldn't call him a swinging from the chandeliers Pentecostal like some of you weirdos, right? I wouldn't call him that. And he just said, look, he sat the guy down. They've been working together for years. I need to talk to you privately. He said, what's going on today? He said, well, Jennifer, whatever her name was, man, I had hopes for her. I was hoping to have kids with her, but, it ended in a big mess, and she's gone. And I still got the lease and all this kind of stuff. And my friend said, I forget the guy's name. Let's call him George. He said, George. And my friend said this. He goes, I didn't bring up the sin thing. I didn't bring up the Bible thing. Nothing. I just said this to him. I said, George, look at me. I married my girlfriend from college, and I've been married 25 years right now. And you know why? Because I didn't live with her before we got married. I didn't have sex with her till our wedding night. And the reason you've had 12 major failed relationships in the last decade that I've known you is because you're doing it wrong. You got to do it the right way. If you want to run the lawnmower, you got to get the owner's manual and run the lawnmower right. And the guy said, well, what is the right way? And he said, well, here's the right way. And he didn't use any Christian talk, because really that's not even in his mind to do it. He wasn't thinking that. He was just thinking, how can I help this guy? And he said, here's how you do it. You find a girl that you think you can spend the rest of your life with, and you date her. And you don't touch her, and you don't do this, and you don't do that, and then you get engaged, and you still don't touch her and do this stuff, and then guess what? You get married, and you know what? The guy said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. And you know what? He tried it. And the guy found a girl, a good girl, got married. They have 3 kids, and my friend told me they've been married like 15 years now. Yeah? So even when it really isn't a thus saith the Lord, if you obey the way the presence rolls, it's going to work. So that's the first thing about action. The second one is this, I only got 3, resilient. Another part of acting well is being tough and not quitting. And this has everything to do with what you heard and who you heard it from. And if God called you to it, and God hadn't called you away from it, then you got to stick with it. If God has spoken to the people of His presence, then they stick with it and they do it no matter what the resistance. And you will have resistance if you're going to do what the presence tells you to do. But you have to decide right now who you are and what you're about, and whose you are and what you're about. If you're really a follower, are you a follower of Jesus or just a fan of Jesus? Oh, he's got a lot of fans. Oh, look at Jesus. He's my champion. Put him out there to fight the devils. Woo, I'm a fan of Jesus, but now I'm going to go do what I want to do. Are you called to follow the narrow way? Or are you just a spectator of the other people going down the narrow way? Have you really left the myth of the beautiful life to join the Jesus way? Or is it just a halfway deal with you? Got one foot. I spent about a year like that. I found Jesus and I still had one foot in the world and one foot with Jesus. That's a dangerous place to be because there's a fence runs right between there. Dangerous place to be. You could laugh at that, Curtis. But real people of His presence are resilient. Elisha, he gets mantled by Elijah. There's no personal thing there. God just said, hey, Elijah, go throw your mantle on this guy. He's going to be the next prophet. Elijah doesn't give 2 figs about the guy. He throws his coat on him. He keeps going. He looks behind him. Elisha's following him. He said, what are you doing? He said, I'm following you. And all these other prophets come up and they say, hey, do you know that God's going to take your master today from you? He goes, yep, and I'm going to be right there when he does it. And 3 times he's dissuaded to stop or to divert. He says, no. He says, I'm going to be right there because I'm going to get all that God has for me. Elisha is a really good example of resilience. You know, my Australian friend told me about this. The Muslim invasion of Spain in 711 AD, there was a guy named Tariq. He was the leader, and the Muslims were really outgunned by the Visigoths. I think it was the Visigoths. They were in Spain at the time, 711 AD. And they get over there on boats on the shore, and there's about 100,000 barbarians. And there's only about 12,000 Muslims. And the first thing the commander of the Muslims does, Tariq is his name, is he tells the guys, burn them boats. Burn the boats. And they burn them. He said, now men, you got the enemy before you and the sea behind you. You have one option, do or die on this ground. This is death ground right here. And they did win. And they invaded Spain, and they were there till the Reconquistador, around the 1400s. They were there at 7 or 8. That's what Alhambra's about. That's what all that stuff in Spain's about. Anyway, burning the boats. Francis Chan, you will see this in the video on that Monday night. He's talking about being in an army of God, you know, and Jesus says, count the cost. You're going to be a soldier. And he goes, can you imagine a soldier come running in? Jesus, there's some guys out there shooting back at me, man. And then there was this guy, and he threw this thing, and it blew up, and what? That was pretty good. When y'all see the clip, you can see how good I did. Resilient. Last one is this, suffering. This is related to resiliency, but it needs to be brought up. I don't think we hear enough about it. Jesus was very clear. If you follow him, you will experience suffering in this life. He will ask you to do some things that will actually bring you into a place of suffering. If you're going to follow him, you're going to suffer. And you'll suffer maybe the loss of friends. Maybe you'll suffer the loss of some money. Maybe some reputation. I don't know what else. Sometimes it's as simple as getting emotionally healthy. When you follow Jesus, if you really follow Jesus, you will get emotionally healthy. Matter of fact, I've been a pastor at this church for 18 years, and I'm not going to do it, but I could name names of people in this room right here who I have seen God do amazing work in their life in emotional health issues. I'm not kidding. I've worked with them. Some have been on my staff. I've seen God do amazing. I got some friends here that could say it right back to me. Said, you know, John, you were a big mess when I first met you, brother. But God has done, I'm the visual aid. God can bring emotional health into your life. You can be a non-anxious presence, man. You can get boundaries. You can get that kind of stuff. You can get all kinds of, you can handle conflict. You can handle people cussing you out. You can handle people hating you. You know what? You get emotionally healthy, God will do it. But here's what I want to say is, sometimes all it is you getting emotionally healthy and all the dysfunction around you can't stand that. Cannot stand that. And because you're upsetting the status quo. If your office or your workplace is a big gossip, emotional train wreck place, and you start being an emotionally healthy person in that situation, they're going to come after you. They're going to come after you because we can't stand it. That's not how we do things around here. So if you decide to be a non-anxious presence in your sphere, the anxiety people will persecute you. They will demand that you stay in the dysfunction. They will demand it. They will triangle you all the time. I got triangled the other day. What's a triangle? It's like there's a deal between me and this guy, and a third person comes in and makes it their business. And this person does not have the grace to deal with this situation right here. They got triangled. People try to do that to me all the time. And they will try to do that to you. And they'll try to get you triangled into a situation. They'll try to keep you in the dysfunctional mess of controlling other people and all kind of stuff. And so, you know what? You're going to say, no, you know what? I'm following Jesus. Now, I took it to prayer, and Jesus told me I'm not supposed to be involved in that anymore. And so guess what? I'm not going to be involved in your deal no more. Matter of fact, I'm going to call your hand on it. I'm going to say you got unforgiveness in your life on that deal. And you've been triangled, and the reason you ain't got no grace for it is because you shouldn't have been in the first place. Well, how dare you talk to me like that, you? That's the kind of thing. If you're going to follow Jesus, some of that stuff's going to happen right here in good old America, right? So you got to count the cost now. You know, what kind of person am I going to be? Jesus told me to count the cost of the tower before I go to build it. What might it cost you to be a person of God's continuing presence? As the culture gets more desperate, it may cost you more than you thought. I don't know. So what? Look at what you get in return. You get Jesus. Actually, this is the beautiful life. It's Jesus. Jesus is the beautiful life. He lived a life of simplicity to his Father, and he calls you and me to live a life of simplicity with him. In obedience to Jesus, in Jesus' presence, that's where it's at. And you're never closer to Jesus than when you're hurting. So this suffering thing, you say, man, I don't want to sign up for suffering. No, nobody does. We're not idiots. But it does come with it, and I'm not being a good preacher of the word if I lie to you and tell you, oh, come to Jesus, and there won't be any suffering. I'm telling you the truth. The Bible says it. If you come to Jesus, there will be suffering. But you get Jesus in your suffering. Nothing wrong with that. I was with the guy last week. A tragic thing happened in our county a couple weeks ago. And me and this guy and another guy were talking about it. And I mean, it was tragic. And Jesus' presence came. These are 3 grown men crying together. And Jesus' presence came. And I'm going to tell you, there is nothing like the presence of Jesus when your heart is broken. Oh, amazing thing. Suffering clears the clutter. It gets us down to what really matters. What really matters in life. Everything else fades away in suffering. So, there's a story from the Insanity of God book where this Soviet guy is behind the Iron Curtain. This is back in the 70s, and he's not a preacher or anything, but he finds Jesus. And so he starts calling people in his village together to study the Bible. The government comes, says, you can't do that. And he says, well, okay. But he keeps doing it. Finally, they come, throw him in jail. He's in jail for 17 years for Jesus. And every morning he got up and sang a heart song. He called it his heart song to Jesus. He stood by his bed, and he sang it out loud, and it echoed all throughout the prison. There's 1,500 prisoners in this place. Everybody making fun of him. Hey, shut up, Did it for 17 years. Finally, the day came, we can't have this guy no more. We're going to take him out and execute him. They're dragging him down the hall. They're going to kill him. All 1,500 of those other prisoners got up and sang the heart song. Guards didn't know what to do. Like, I guess we got to let you go. They let him go. Went home. Suffering for Jesus, but it doesn't have to be something crazy like that. When I found Jesus, I went back to this guy that I was in business with. I was a college student, but we had a business where we did concrete work, and I told him about Jesus. We were driving down the road. I never will forget it. And he just listened to me for about an hour because I was telling him about Jesus. And I guess he just had enough. And we got to some gas pumps. He said, I need to get some gas. And he pulled off. He started filling up his tank with gas. And he started cussing me out one side and down the other. Lighting me up at the gas pump. And I'm like, right then when it was happening, I was like, wow, this is not normal. This is not normal behavior. I was like, this is the devil talking right through this guy at me. And this guy, we had been good friends for a long time, and to be honest with you, that was the end of our friendship that day. But he gave me Jerry as a friend. I got Curtis, he pops off at me, but he's my friend. I lose one friend and I got 100. Better than that guy ever was, right? The building fund, John brought it up. I wasn't going to bring. Oh, by the way, this is so crazy how the Holy Spirit works, right? I'm going to talk about the presence of God. I got no idea what songs Ariana's hearing God talk about. She brings this whole song about the presence of God. I'm sitting there in the front row going, oh man, I'm in the right place today. I'm almost done, but the last thing is this. John brought up that building fund thing. The number that God gave me and my wife was big, that we had to give every month to this building fund. And I'm like, we can't do that. And I went home and told her, and she said, we can't do that. And I said, I know, but I think God said it. And it's a big number. And it's like, where's that going to come from? I don't know. Let's try it. So we tried it. The first month we made it. The second month we made it. The third month, we made it. You know, got all the way around, and then we sold our place in Martindale, and I could pay all the other 14 months off in one foul swoop. But the bottom line is I made it at a number that I never thought could go. And then guess what? God called me to put 2 kids in college. And I made it. I made it on that month with the college, and I made it on this month with the college, and I made it on this month with the college. Here's the point. There's some, you might not really call that suffering, but there's a lot of stuff I could have done with that money. But Jesus said, put it over here. And when he did that, I didn't know, but he was building me. He was building my faith so that I could give bigger on something else that had nothing to do really with the building. And it's interesting to me. Okay, so here's the conclusion. God's presence is coming, so ready or not, get ready. His presence is coming. And his presence is going to come, and it'll affect people 2 ways. For me, it's going to be a blessing. If you are anti-presence, it's going to be his judgment. That's what's happening to our culture. There's not one of our politicians that is calling out for a day of fasting and prayer. Why? They don't live there. They ain't got a clue. Fasting and prayer to them is like celebrating, going trick-or-treating on Halloween. It is irrelevant to the real problems of the world. Guess what? Then God's presence comes as judgment to those people. And that's what's happening in the United States of America. But for me, his presence is a blessing. So where am I on a day when the wheels are falling off? I'm in here being led in worship by our people and with you. So there's some days I come in here, I don't feel like worshiping Jesus. But guess what? These 2 people do, and she does, and him and his wife do, and I'm just standing next to them. And I'm in the splash zone. I get some of it on me. Second thing is correct listening. You know, maybe you need to get serious about listening. Where is it that you listen? It's going to be countercultural. Because what the culture is what Martha was doing. What's countercultural is shutting all that off and listening. So where is your listening going to happen? And then lastly, correct acting. You know, are you in or you out? I mean, are you a disciple? I mean, Jesus said, go make disciples. And he said, well, there's disciples and there's Christians. I don't know. I don't think so. Not the way I read it. Jesus said, come follow me. That's all he ever said. Jesus never had membership class 101 where he said, okay, look, there's kind of less than over here. Y'all are just Christians. And then there's the super Christians we call disciples. It ain't in the Bible. It's not in there. So, are you a follower or are you just a fan? Are you in the game or are you just a spectator? You know? So that's what I want to leave you with. I want to pray for you real quick. Nobody looking around. I just want to throw up a hand or 2 here. But you need God to speak to you about a listening time. Raise your hand. You say, yeah, I want to get serious about listening. Okay, hold them up. You're holding up to God, not me. Father God, these people are in good-hearted faith. They're holding up their hands and they're saying, hey, we want to listen. We want to be like Mary. We want to find a place to listen. God, would you show them right now before they leave the building today? Matter of fact, during communion, if you so choose, would you speak to them right now? They say, I've never heard God before in my life. You know what you're going to today? It's going to be like this simple thought that's going to enter your mind, and God's going to show you where to listen to him. And it's going to be it's going to be a daily deal. You're going to know exactly what part of your day, every day, to listen. He'll show you the time and he'll show you the place. It's going to happen. And then lastly, correct acting. You know, it's really it, man. Are we followers or are we fans? And I think, I don't need a show of hands or anything like that, but I think when you come to this table with this is the broken body of Christ here. This is what this represents, you know, and we know that it's a sacrament, so the Holy Spirit's here, and so when we take that bread and that juice, something happens, and I'm going to tell you what, something can happen in your life. You can say, you know what, I'm done being just a spectator. I'm going to take this bread and this juice today because I'm going to be a follower. This is the last day I'm a half-hearted milquetoast person. I'm going to be in it to win it because I see the winning side. So be it. Okay, so we have our prayer teams here. We want to pray with you. We want to agree with you to see God do breakthrough in your life this week. We're going to win this week because the presence is with us. And we're going to win. So I want to bless you with that. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I just bless everybody in the room today with discernment this week. We're going to be able to hear like we've never heard before. We're going to hear what God's saying about certain situations. and then we're going to act correctly. And we're going to walk in confidence because we have heard. We're not going to be guessing. We're going to be going, I know, God said this, I'm doing it. So I bless you with that, with confidence today. It's going to be a good week. So be it. Amen. All right, God bless you.